it is freezing in here. Oh my God, it's cold. What's up guys, good morning. Hope you all are having an amazing day. Yesterday, I got to introduce somebody who was completely brand new to the vlogs you've never seen before. I didn't really film too much, but what I did film, I'm gonna insert right now. We just got to the shop. I'm gonna try to find Rocky, where's he at? Where's he at? DMC's got this crazy thing. What was this, Rocky, a Corvette?
Yep.
It used to be?
C5.
Now it's just a go-kart. Changes for the Z soon. Stay tuned. Also, just to clarify, I know some of you guys thought that I was running an ETS exhaust on my Subaru. They actually made my custom straight pipe, no muffler, no resonator. DMC does amazing fab work. I'm gonna be back for my own custom exhaust for the Evo. I was gonna run a Tomei, but for the same price, I figured I could do something a little bit different, and I wanna show you guys, I wanna incorporate other shops that I really enjoy, and I really like DMC, and Rocky's been a really long time good friend of mine. And so I like working on them with any projects that I possibly can. So we linked up with the homie Janie. Janie vlog.
Stop.
Vlog Janie.
I haven't changed yet.
No, who cares?
I look ugly.
No, you don't.
Hi, bye.
So this is like some Asian buffet that Janie works at. I've never been to, it's like Shabu or something. I don't know, I'm not Asian guys. I'm like super white, but it's my first time. I should have filmed the madness of trying to follow her around in her own workplace. She's like 6, I don't even know what those things are called, containers ahead of me, getting a bunch of stuff. I just grabbed a bunch of random things that look good.
I grabbed an eggshell.
An eggshell? Yeah, I got no eggshell. That's why I have an empty container.
Because you didn't grab an egg.
I know. Explain that.
Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Whenever you're ready.
So the right way to technically do this is to take one piece of meat at a time into the shabu, and then you let it cook.
Yeah.
But for me, when I'm lazy, which is usually, I'll just take the whole thing and just kind of put it all on the side. That's not the right way to do it.
But how to? Alright, just murdered like 3 plates of food with Janie. She's getting us some macaroon right now. Pretty good shabu experience. This is the fattest little ice cream thing I've ever seen. Janie called it a little chode.
Oh my God, no, I didn't.
Yeah, you did. Damn, Janie's creeping hard on the Evo right now.
Oh,
First, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I need to get rid of that OG head unit though, it's annoying. Now some of you guys may be asking yourself, who is this? Who is she? Is this my replacement? No, it's not my replacement, you horn dogs. She is just a really good friend, and she's actually somebody who's really into cars, and actually, believe it or not, has her own brand associated with cars that produces car parts right now. There's a lot in the works with what she's doing with her brand, which eventually I'll get to and explain what they're doing. But basically, we were really long-term friends, and then due to certain life events, we kind of had to split, do our own thing, and now we're like kind of talking and stuff, and we're gonna do a future project in the future together. But for now, I just wanted to introduce her to the vlogs and just kind of get you guys familiar, because everyone I ever put on these videos, they're all people that I plan on working with or offer some type of like talent with automotive stuff, or like their friends, or like they all have a purpose is what I'm trying to say. If you guys have me on Snapchat, you guys know that I'm running on like 4 hours of sleep right now. I really need this coffee, which if you guys haven't already, add me. I love talking to all you guys, and you guys get a look at behind the scenes of what goes into the build or making the videos. So I'm at a Starbucks down the street from 5150. Look at this. I'm the Uber Eats guys. Check out the street art. This is really cool. I really enjoy stuff like this. Oh wow, I wonder what kind of vehicles those are. I'm literally the first one at the shop right now. No one's here yet. All right, so we're here with Ronnie. We're waiting for Alex, who's just rolling up right now to unlock the shop. So we're in the shop now. Ronnie's clearing it out. There was like 5 other cars he had to move, and then he has to look at this Evo 9. That's on the lift. God, I can't even talk over that thing. It's so loud. He's gonna look at this thing, something with the timing belt or some type of wine. That's like some more troubleshooting. But this is probably gonna be an all-day event here at the shop, because Ronnie has a lot to do before we can actually assemble the engine as well. But I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I always have mad fun when I come here because I learn so much about just the platform and stuff, and Ronnie's super knowledgeable, as you guys know. So sit back, relax, it's gonna be fun. Ronnie just finished up this Evo 9. A couple hours later, we're ready to start on his stuff. It turns out that whoever brought them the timing belt for that car, they brought it for a 4G64 instead of the 63. So it was making a kind of a squeak, but then Ronnie luckily had an extra belt that he's able to throw in that car and correct the issue. Unnecessary way to spend a few hours, but now we get to do the fun stuff of building his motor. I always really enjoy hanging out with the dude. Show me a lot about, you know, learning how to tension the timing belt, taking off the water pump, and a bunch of other things. We got Ronnie's block in here. He's just cleaning up the workplace, and he's gonna do a little introduction of all the stuff they added on, because you got even more parts, you said, from last time.
Yeah, so we're gonna lay everything out this time and go over everything. It's finally here, dude. So happy. So always oil it and put something on so it doesn't flash rust. Cast iron will do that fast.
About to pressure wash the block, get any contaminants out of the cylinders. So excited to show you guys every step of the way of Roni's motor build, because if you guys remember a really long time ago, we pulled the head off, diagnosed a little bit of the build, then got to see what was actually the main cause of the rod knock here, and then now he's going to do the final assembly, and then obviously I'll get the video of the dyno stuff. So you guys are literally getting a full start to finish of an entire 4G63 build. If you guys are ready for 800, 900 horsepower pulls, make sure to smash that like button.
This time around I ran out and it was last minute, so I got some Harbor Freight brushes. All you want to do is pretty much make sure, like, you know, it's not going to come off. Nothing's going to come off. And I'm going to rinse it anyway after I use this. So all I'm going to do with this is I'm actually just going to take it and run it through basically the main galleys. And, you know, just to make sure there's no debris or anything left. You just want to make sure there's no like big particles in it. That's pretty much it, because most of this stuff's going to wash out on the first oil change anyway. I use ATF on the cylinder walls because even after it comes back from the machine shop and it gets hot tank, there's still like particles of, like, you know, dust and stuff, like metal dust and stuff that sticks to the cylinder walls. The only way you can clean that is with ATF. So ATF's actually a detergent. So when you put it on these blue towels, you put the ATF on there and you basically rub the cylinder. And I've already done this. This is the second round I'm doing it, so you don't see much material. But the first time, like I said, right after the hot tank, you see a crap load of stuff stuck to it. So you just do it because you don't want the rings to basically sit on that material. You want it to be like a bare cylinder. You want it to be as clean as you can.
Ready?
Alright, so right now what I'm doing is I'm actually wiping off the oil that I put on the main journals. Kind of hungover again. That's why I can't fucking find my word. It's a tedious process. You can't rush this just because, you know, it's one of those things you really don't want to like miss anything. You want to make sure you pay attention to what you're doing. Make sure everything's super clean. That's why I get nervous every time I do an assembly, because I just want to make sure it's absolutely clean. You know, there's this mentality of you don't have to be super clean, it's gonna wash everything out when you do the break-in. But the reality of it is that even if you get a speck of material behind the bearing, you risk the chance of spinning the bearing. Or even if you get it on the surface, like on the actual surface of the bearing, you're cutting the bearing of the life of that bearing short, because, you know, now there's like an indentation on the bearing, or like there's a high spot on the bearing. And it's just, these are things that can be easily avoided if you take a few minutes and make sure everything is nice and clean. I actually wash them in the sink first, believe it or not, with hot water.
Bearings?
Yeah, there's a thin oil that they put on there that really doesn't come off with like brake cleaner and stuff. They do that so it doesn't rust, like the backs of the bearing don't rust. Just make sure everything's clean. You put the bearings in, you bolt the main griddle on, and then you measure the main bearing clearance, and then King bearings, the reason I like using them is compared to like ACL and like other bearings, well, I can only speak for ACL, is they're very consistent. It's between like 0.2 of a thousandths of each other usually. So if there's like a deviation between bearing to bearing, like, you know, the main cap to cap, all you gotta do is you just gotta go back and like just take that bearing out, put it in the other cap. You know what I mean? You swap them around until you get an even amount of clearance, whatever clearance you're trying to run. You just want to make sure it's all even. You know, so you don't have like 3 thousandths on one cap and like 2 thousandths on another cap. don't like to wear gloves when I'm dealing with bearings, just because I want to be able to feel if there's any oil behind them or not. So let's say you're using a set of bearings and you know, one of them has like 2/10 of a thou, basically is 2/10 of a thou tighter than the other ones. You want to make sure that one goes on the front, because the oil pump is right there, so it gets supplied with oil. Because if it's the last one, that's the last one basically the oil pump supplies. So by the time it gets to the back, you know, it might be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. 2/10 of a thou isn't going to do anything, I promise, but it's just another thing, one of those things that I'm like superstitious about. So I make sure if there's a tight bearing, it comes on the front one. Another reason is the flywheel's in the back. So, you know, the transmission's in the back. So you want to make sure the widest bearing goes in the back out of, you know, the whole batch. Just because you want to basically so there's like some torsional vibration in the back, you know, on the transmission side. You just want to make sure it has the most clearance, if you can. If you have like the same clearance all around, that's fine too. But I'm just saying, you don't want to have the tightest one in the back if you have to deal with a situation like that. Poly lube on all these studs and nuts and washers, and we'll torque them to spec, and then we'll mic the crank, and then we'll zero out the valve bore gauge to my micrometer. And then we'll see what kind of oil clearances we have and if we need to swap them around or not.
So there was a small hiccup right now in building the motor. I had to go get some 12-point sockets, 12mm 12 points. I went to 2 other stores and they didn't have it, but I finally went to my second Sears and they had them. So I'm gonna head back to the shop right now so I can get these to Roni. He's been pressure washing some stuff while I was over here and making progress. Really was stressing out trying to find these because we want to make as much progress as we can with the little time. I know John's coming in later for a tune. I don't know if he's gonna ask Roni to do stuff, which is why I kind of put a pressure on trying to be as quick as possible with this. We have a wild Godzilla.
So I'm about to show you guys how to actually stretch rod bolts. These are supposed to be 60 foot-pounds, but in order to stretch these 625s, you gotta go to 65. So it's one of those things that when you do it a few times, you feel more comfortable doing it, but realistically, it's not the actual torque that matters, it's the stretch that matters. How you stretch rod bolts. So this is a rod bolt stretch gauge, okay? So there's a recessed area over here, and there's basically like a hole on the back side of it. If you look, the recessed area, this side of the stretch gauge goes in the recessed area, and then this is preloaded, so the bottom portion of it, the shank just sticks into the rod bolt like that, okay? So you have to make sure that the rod bolt is loose, okay? So it's in, you know, it's in its installed position. You can actually have this out and do it, it doesn't matter, because it's loose, you know, it's not tight. So what you do is you literally make sure that the gauge is zero to this rod bolt, because each one will have a variance in, you know, size and stuff. So you got to make sure it's zeroed out to the one you're actually measuring. Okay, so this one I know it's on the tank side. Okay, you see where the bearings sit? Yeah. With the tangs over there. So I know the tank side is zeroed right now. Okay. So what I'll do is I will put this on. I will torque them to spec. Well, my spec, I should say. Yeah, because they're not supposed to get torqued to 65 foot-pounds, but nothing's gonna happen. All right, so what I do usually is I snug this up. I go maybe to like 20 foot-pounds, and then I'll go to the other rod bolt and I'll do an even pull until it gets tight, and then I'll come back to this, and then I'll do another even pull. There you go. So now, pick it out. Remember we zeroed out the tank side? So this is stretched 6 thousandths, okay? 6 thou. So I need to be anywhere between 6 and 3/10 of a thou to 6 and 7/10 of a thou. So what that means is I need to take this off again, put more lube, torque it again. Like I said, usually the amount of lube you put in there will basically, you know, determine if you're gonna get to the stretch or not. We're gonna do this for all 4 rods. You guys don't have to watch it. Yeah. So this is a wrist pin that CP basically sells with their off-shelf Evo pistons. This is a special wrist pin that I ordered from CP. As you can see, it's almost double the thickness. This is a 250 thousandths wall thickness, which is actually thicker, 25 thousandths thicker than the Waisekos. So the advantage of this is gonna stay in there. It's not gonna rip out when you try to throw crazy amounts of boost at it. The drawback is that it basically equates to a heavier rotating assembly. So theoretically speaking, the bearing life decreases the heavier the rotating assembly is. So that's one of the drawbacks, but you need to, if you're trying to make power, you need to go with thick wrist pins. And then off-shelf CP pistons, man.
They're beautiful.
A recipe for a 900 or 1,000 horsepower capable 4G63. It doesn't take much, man. It just takes good parts, good machine work and clean assembly. That's pretty much it. Again, like I said, after I check the bearing clearances, I'm gonna clean it again. Just look at it before you install the bearing. Make sure there's no like specks of dust or whatever. Sometimes you get like a piece of debris or something that can get stuck in there. Same thing with the back of the bearing. I always inspect it to make sure it's dry. As you can see, it has a dull surface. That's a good thing. If there's an oil spot or something, you can easily detect it. You just don't want it to be there. You want it to be clean when you install the bearings. Like, wiggle it around a few times. Make sure it's 0. Right at 6.5 or 6.4. The same within all of them. Well, so far. So let's see with the last rod. Hopefully we can just land at 65 and be at the happy place. So these rod bearings that I actually have are not Evo rod bearings. These are actually out of a 2G DSM. So these are actually about 1/8 of an inch wider. These rods that I have, the billet R&Rs, they are actually made to be ran with these bearings. So no modifications required to basically the bearing, the rod tang, nor the bearing itself. So it just pops on. A side note, by the way, if you're trying to do it like this, make sure you get an extra tub of the, well, I like using the CP stuff, but honestly it's better to use whatever the connecting rod comes with, because that's how they stretch it at the factory, and the specs you get are using that lube. But make sure you get an extra tub, because I usually use 2 every time I do the blueprint, just because you have to use a lot of it. So just a fun fact, aluminum rods are known to stretch over time. So back in the day, I had a friend that used to build like 2,000 horsepower Mustang motors, and he would basically tell me how, like, when it would stretch enough, it would actually hit the valves, so you'd hear it, like the ticking. Yeah, like they literally stretch, especially if you're throwing that much power at it. I don't know if that's still a thing. I'm sure they've remedied it to some extent, but it is aluminum. So when Josh was gone, I already mic'd the crank, but I'm gonna do it again just to demonstrate. And all of the journals, besides one, are the same size. One of them is 2/10 of a thou smaller. So I'm just gonna keep that in mind, because I'm gonna zero this out to what the other 3 are. Anyway, so this is how you measure them. You take your shiny shaft. Alright, so this micrometer has basically like a auto release or whatever. I'm not sure what this is called, this mechanism. It's a ratchet. You can call it that. So basically what that means is, as soon as it closes the gap, it'll actually start ratcheting, and it won't let you like crush the journal. So you won't scuff it or anything like that. Let me demonstrate what I mean. But if you see, the numbers aren't moving anymore. See, like right now the numbers are moving, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as it closes the air gap, the numbers don't move anymore. So what I like to do is I like to drag the mic around just a tiny bit while I ratchet it, and make sure that I'm taking out all the air gap. And this is how you read it pretty much. So we know that it's a 1 to 2 inch micrometer, okay? So we know that it's not 2 inches, because if it was 2 inches it would be maxed out. So we know we're between 1 and 2. So if you look here, each one of those numbers is 100,000ths of an inch, okay? Or 1/10 of an inch. So as you can see, we have 700,000ths of an inch, okay? Because the 8's not uncovered yet, but the 7 is. So that means it's 1.7. If you zoom in closer, all those little numbers, can they see it?
Yeah, you can see it.
Let me see if I can point it. These numbers are 25 10,000ths of an inch each one. Okay, so you can see we have 1, 2, which means 50, basically 50 thousandths. And then since the third one is not uncovered, you go to this side of the micrometer. Okay, so you can see that we have 21 thousandths over here, but we don't have 22 thousandths yet. Okay, so 1.7 plus 50 thousandths plus 21, that's 1.771 and 2 10,000ths. So I measure to the 4th decimal place.
Dang.
This is what I mean by a little tedious. This literally goes down to the 4th decimal place. Do you really need to? I don't know. I've always done it. That way I have a list of exactly what my clearances are down to the 10ths of a thousandths. I mean, you can't really get more accurate than that.
Okay.
This micrometer is a precision tool, okay? So if I were to just put it in the vise and, you know, lock it, it may distort it, okay? I don't want to risk doing that. So what I do is usually I'll just put a piece of towel or something, and all I'm doing really is just closing the air gap. You know, it doesn't have to be crazy tight. You know, it's just snug in there. And this basically helps it not get distorted. It's locked to the journal size, okay? So my rod bearing journal size. So this dial bore gauge, I already have the 1.8 inch attachment, which is just slightly bigger than, you know, our 1.7 something measurement that we had. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in the micrometer, zero it out to wherever it stops rotating, and then I'm gonna put the rod vise and I'm gonna measure each rod bearing clearance. So basically when I put this in, since this is zeroed out to the diameter of the crank journal, it's gonna tell me the difference between that and the rod bearing. So that's how you find out your oil clearance. It's pretty simple. I usually pull it out and I put it back in one more time. That sounds so wrong. Alright, so now that I know it's zeroed for a fact, take the mic out of the vise, put the rod vise back on, okay, and I go grab my other side. Yeah, right at 2.5, 2.5 thou. That's a perfect clearance. Okay, as you can see right away, I ended up at just 0.2 of a thou deviation between all the rod bearings. So what that means is I can go around and swap bearings again, but it's only 0.2 of a thou. That's not gonna make any difference. So I know that I'm where I need to be, which is, you know, 2.2 to 2.5 thou of an inch for the rod bearings, and, you know, similar for the mains. Ideally, I always like ending up a little tighter for on the mains and a little looser on the rod bearings, because just like electricity, when you're talking about hydraulic pressure, oil pressure in a concealed environment like a motor, it'll take the path of least resistance. And EOs are notorious for, you know, rod bearing failure, right? Well, that's what usually goes. So if you have less resistance to the rod bearing, then it's, you know, it's less likely to be an issue. So, but with the balance shaft removed, with the oil cooler on and the oil squirters on, 2.5 thou, 2 to 2.5 thou is perfect clearance for an EVO motor. Perfect clearance. Like, you're not gonna have any oil pressure issues. Oil pressure is gonna be a little bit on the high side, but nothing alarming. And as long as if you're using 2050 like I am, as long as you just wait in the mornings, you know, just let the viscosity, you know, drop a little bit in the morning, you're gonna be fine. You know, nothing's gonna happen. You're not gonna, you know, hurt the motor. We can actually install the crank. You know, I'm just gonna take out the bearings, make sure they're, you know, wiped clean again. Like I said, I like to do that a few times just to make sure there's nothing on the bearing backs. And then we're gonna install the thrust bearings. In this case, I'm using ACL thrust bearings. They're, you know, they're just like OEM thrust bearings. When I actually bolt on the crank, after I figure out my main bearing clearances and actually bolt in the crank and torque it down to spec, with the thrust bearings in there, I'm actually gonna measure my thrust, like the actual end plate, crankshaft end plate. So basically I'm gonna do it is I have a magnetic base that's gonna go over here on the front where the oil pump would mount, and then the dial indicator will go on the snout of the crankshaft, and I'll basically pry it all the way back, and I'll zero the gauge out, and then I'll pry it all the way forward, and it'll tell me how much thrust I have. So measuring main bearing clearance again, all I'm gonna do is the same thing I did for the rod journal, except this micrometer is a 2 to 3 inch instead of a 1 to 2. So I got a Facebook, you know, there was like this Facebook debate that a machinist came and he was like, oh yeah, like if you don't have a torque plate, it'll actually get wider. That's not true. When you bolt on a torque plate, it actually, I'm sorry, if you don't have a torque plate and you bolt on the head, like let's say you don't machine the motor with a torque plate and then you bolt on a torque plate just to measure, you know, taper and stuff, the upper portion of the cylinder will actually get tighter, not looser. That makes no sense. It'll get tighter. So let's say you're at 5 thousandths piston to wall, right? Without a torque plate. There may be up to a thou and a half, or up to like 2 thousandths of an inch deviation off the top of the cylinder. So you're really at like 3 thousandths piston to wall. And you know that's why I can't stress enough when applicable, some motors don't use a torque plate. It just depends on, basically it depends on how much in the head stud goes. Okay? The closer it is to the main bearings, the less need of a torque plate pretty much, because it's just more straighter. But on an Evo, it goes down like this much. It's not even, it's right here, and the main bearings are right here. So you need a torque plate for this motor. I can't stress that enough. If you want it to run healthy, you know, we're right at 4 thousandths piston to wall with my current setup. But even if it was 3.5, that would be fine. Nothing would happen. It's just I wanted to have that extra cushion if I want to get stupid with it later on, throw nitrous at it or whatever. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Probably not. Piston to wall, right? You're gonna have a lot less blow by. You're gonna have a lot better compression, and the motor is gonna last a lot longer. You know what I mean? Because the rings aren't gonna wear as much. The piston's not gonna slap as much. Yeah. It's just so many things that, like, you know, like it's like a chain reaction pretty much. Looser is not always better, even if it's a race motor. You know, if you have a full-on drag motor, even you don't need to run that loose of a clearance. Usually 4 thou piston to wall is perfect. If it's been machined properly, 4 thousandths is perfect. Piston to wall on an Evo 8.9. I'm saying, don't take this. You know, this is only, I'm only talking about Evo 8s and 9s. Even Evo 10s if they're sleeved. Because if they're not, basically I'm talking about an iron liner with an aluminum piston, like a 2618 aluminum alloy piston, like, you know, any forged piston. And the reason is you have to set a bigger piston to wall on an iron liner because iron expands slower than aluminum. So if it was an aluminum liner and an aluminum piston, you could actually run like a thou less. You know what I mean? Because they're expanding at the same rate. But right, because the iron takes longer to expand, the piston will expand, and the iron will still be expanding, so it'll seize up in the cylinder. So the whole reason you run, you know, extra thou or thou and a half is because of that. I mean, you don't have to. I mean, it's not that heavy. It's not that bad. Let's lift it up all the way, please. Clearance is right now, again, 0.2 of a thou deviation. So I have 2.6 thou, 2.8 thou, 2.5, 2.5, 2.6. Okay, so ideally what I want to do is I want to take this grid off, swap my tightest clearance with the, basically, okay, let's say this is 2.6, this is 2.8. Or I'm sorry, this is 2.5, this is 2.8. I'm going to swap this bearing on this one. And then I'm going to bolt it back, torque it again, and measure the clearance again. So, this is how you gap the piston rings. You basically put whichever ring you're going to gap inside. And then what I like to do is I like to take my piston ring pliers, put the secondary ring on the second groove, and then just push it down until the ring stops the piston. Okay, so it's, you know, you go square right below the bore. Now what you would do is you would take your feeler gauge, and then, you know, you would stick this in and see if you have enough clearance. I know that's like not even 10 thousandths, so that has to get grinded quite a bit. So what you want to do is you want to take material off of one side and you want to leave the other side alone. You don't want to like close both gaps and try to grind both sides. The reason you want to do that is you want to have a good reference of squaring it and making sure that it's 100% straight. You know what I mean? So if you're cutting offset, you can actually see it. The thing is, never go upwards, never go backwards when you're grinding a piston ring, because it'll literally lift it up and it'll like chip a side of it. So you always go like out.
Away from you?
Yes, away from you. You want to check, like after you grind a few times, you basically want to hold it steady and look at it and make sure that the ring is not bent. If it's bent, you gotta toss it and get a new one. Literally, if you don't, it's one of those things that you just don't risk it when the motor's apart. Alright, you see how when it butts ends, it doesn't, it's like perfectly flush? That's exactly what you want it to be. You don't want to have any like inconsistencies in it, you know what I mean? Because then the gap could be off.
Right.
So sometimes what you want to do to make sure your measurements, you know, 100% perfect, you can just drag the ring up and re-square it just to make sure that you're getting the right measurement. Right at 4 thousandths piston-to-wall.
Is that where you want to be?
Yep, that's perfectly where I want to be. You know, that's gonna change the readings quite a bit. If I have a torque plate on, this is gonna be almost a perfect 4.
16 hours later, finally left the shop. I'm at Shell right now, filling up some gas for the Evo. It was a really long and productive day, but I'm glad we were able to get some real filming in with Roni's Evo build. The final build is coming to a wrap. I can't wait to show you guys. It's gonna be mad fun. You guys better be ready for some serious dyno pulls, because it's gonna go down very soon. Also, if you guys are wondering why the motor build segment got kind of cut short, it's because my camera died. I went through 3 batteries. We recorded a total, I believe, of 87 minutes or so, and I slimmed this down to about 34 minutes or something like that. I wanted to try to give the best concrete details that Roni could possibly give throughout the whole thing. I don't want to make it like an hour long, and then you guys obviously aren't going to sit through it. I just wanted to give you guys the best details that Roni has to offer, while also making it kind of short enough that you guys can all make it through. So I hope you guys can understand. If you guys made it to this point in the video, thank you guys so much. Trust me, if you guys made it through all of these educational and awesome videos of Roni showing you guys how to assemble a 4G63, it's gonna be awesome when you finally see the car on the dyno and it's making big power. And we're gonna do obviously my reaction to the car, because it'll hands down be the fastest car I've ever been in, no doubt. And you guys basically got to ride shotgun throughout the entire experience. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys aren't ready, please subscribe to the channel. There's some huge Evo videos coming your guys' way. You guys are just gonna have to be patient and wait and find out. See you guys all in the next video.